All right, let's dive right into a story from what's often called the world's most haunted prison. We're going to follow one man through his final terrifying night, where he faces a choice that is just beyond impossible.
And that's the exact terrifying choice a prisoner named Thomas had to make inside the infamous Shepton Mallet prison over in the UK. You know, a place where the only light offers zero safety, and the darkness? Well, the darkness holds its own special kind of horror.
So our story kicks off with Thomas. He was an officer, accused of leaking department secrets, and he's being escorted to his cell. But as the jailer reads out the cell assignment, Thomas sees this look on his face. It wasn't pity. It was something way closer to actual fear. And that was the very first sign that this was not going to be a normal night.
He gets led down this terrifying, dungeon-like passage. It was a total contrast to the other parts of the prison, which were at least maintained. The air down here was thick, it smelled awful, and it just felt like a place that had been forgotten for a very, very long time.
And then he saw it, the door to cell C. It was just covered in this deep, heavy rust, and it looked like it hadn't been opened in years, almost like time itself had tried to seal it shut for good.
So when the jailer finally forces it open, the sound of that rusted metal scraping apart, it didn't sound like a normal door. It was this high-pitched screech that sounded unnervingly like a person screaming. It was a pretty chilling welcome.
Once he was locked inside, Thomas, he thought he was alone. But as his eyes started to adjust to the pitch black, he heard a faint whisper from the darkness that made his heart just leap into his throat. He spotted another prisoner in a cell just across the way, and he called out to him. In the short conversation they had, well, it would lead to a discovery that was just deeply, deeply unsettling.
Thomas was absolutely horrified. He looked down at his own prison uniform, at the number stitched on it. His inmate number was also 44. I mean, how is that even possible?
And that's when the other prisoner reveals this impossible truth. It's not just you, he says. Every single inmate in every single cell, they all have that exact same number.
And as Thomas looked around again, he saw them. Dozens of prisoners who absolutely had not been there just a few moments before, and they were all horribly maimed. We're talking burned faces, deep wounds. They looked more like ghosts than men.
I mean, what do you even do at that point? Completely overwhelmed, Thomas just tries to sleep, to shut it all out, but he's jolted awake by a frantic sound, footsteps running desperately right outside his cell. He peers through the bars to see what's going on, and he sees her. A woman in a tattered, dirty wedding gown, just darting back and forth in the corridor like a panicked, trapped spirit. One of the other inmates hisses this desperate warning from a cell nearby. But it was too late. The woman suddenly just stops, stands completely still directly in front of Thomas's cell.
And now that she was right there in front of him, he could see these horrific details. Her eyes, they were pools of red, almost like she was crying blood. Her lips were crudely sewn shut with thread, and you could just make out the bruised fingerprints of a hand on her neck. There was absolutely no question she was the victim of a violent end.
Terrified, Thomas does the only thing he can think of. He slams his eyes shut, just hoping it's a nightmare. When he finally gets the courage to open them again, the corridor is empty. It's completely silent. The woman is gone. So just as this wave of relief starts to wash over him, he's hit by this sweet smell, a woman's perfume filling his cell. He spins around, and his heart just stops. She wasn't gone. She was now inside the cell with him.
But this was some kind of deception. The terrifying ghost, it had morphed into an impossibly beautiful woman. Her beauty was supernatural, and it hypnotized him on the spot. He was totally captivated.
She leaned in close and whispered, asking if he wanted to stay with her for all eternity. And in this trance, he was completely unable to resist. He just nodded yes. A smile crossed her face, and then she threw a sharp knife at his feet and gave him a very simple, very horrifying command to prove that he meant it.
And he was about to do it. He picks up the knife, raises it to his own chest, but for just a split second, he sees a flash of her true face, the ghost with the blood-filled eyes, and the spell breaks. He snaps out of it, throws the knife down, and starts screaming for the jailer. The jailer finally shows up, and he's clearly annoyed. He just dismisses Thomas's whole frantic story, insisting the entire wing was empty, that Thomas was the only person there.
Now, the jailer promised to look into moving him first thing in the morning,
probably just to get him to be quiet. But by the time morning came, it was already way too late.
And here's the really chilling part. The jailer wasn't surprised. He found Thomas's body, the knife plunged into his chest, and he knew this was going to happen. See, every single prisoner they put in cell C meets the exact same fate, in the exact same way.
And this is where we learn the prison's dark secret, the origin of this whole curse, the woman in white. She was the original inmate 44.
So, the story goes that years ago, a young woman was arrested on the eve of her wedding and brought to the prison still in her wedding gown. They assigned her the inmate number 44, and she was so terrified of her execution that she took her own life in that very cell. Now, her tormented spirit is cursed to haunt it, compelling every inmate who shares her number to also share her fate.
Which leaves us with this final, chilling thought. In Thomas's story, the beautiful woman was the light that drew him in, right? A kind of beacon in all that darkness. But in reality, she was the source of the terror itself. It makes you wonder, what if the very thing that we run towards for safety is actually the most dangerous thing of all?